All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, round 8, and this is going to be a banger. There's certain races that you go in and you have an idea of who's going to be competing for the win, who's going to be the fastest. Anybody starting in the top 4 this week can compete for the win. This is a situation where I do want to talk more about just slate strategy and what I want to do. Like, for example, normally, say I enter 8, 6, 10 lineups into the 15, I can normally recoup the entry fee due to the fact that I usually build the exact same way. And so if they cash, I usually have, 6, 7 of those guys cash, and then I'll have, a couple that don't cash because I have value that either wrecks out or doesn't beat a teammate, whatever the case is. F1 is very similar to esports in the sense that there's a higher likelihood that you're going to have ties for first and then duplicates, not only for first, but for once you get past all the guys tied for first, you get all the guys tied for what would be, second, technically the second highest scoring line, but, we won't be tying for like 27th, whatever the case is. And when you get into situations like that, you can normally build lines that can lead to being optimal or that, have, miss one person being optimal, somewhere around there. With a race like this, where there's so many different ways to go about it, I'm really not confident in one main driver, and I don't feel confident about building all my lines leaning towards one direction. If you know how I play, DFS, I normally build, multiple lines that tend to lead towards the same build. I don't tend to spread out ownership a lot in my lines. Just that's how I like to play. I like to play aggressive. I don't think this is a slate that you can do that unless you absolutely nail who the race winner is. Normally I don't show anything from the Patreon. And if you want to support me, support Pearce, support the work that we do not only for F1, but for NASCAR as well, you can join us. You can join the F1 tier on Patreon. You can join our NASCAR and F1 tier. But let's look at the practice stuff real fast. And I know I'm kind of going over it quickly. I try and keep the F1 videos condensed. But let's just quickly click through the practice speeds, and you can see, yeah, sure, Verstappen and Perez, which I do want to add that I think Perez is going to be very close to beating Verstappen in this race, just head-to-head between the two drivers. But when we look at the speeds between these sessions, and then you look at the track, like, sure, okay, Verstappen stayed at the top, but you see Leclerc gaining speed. Then certainly in practice 3, you see Perez being there, you see Leclerc being there, and then you look at how qualifying played out with really the top 4 just being separated by just... And sure, look, Leclerc got the pole position, but in the races, this is a track that is not only going to have a ton of porpoising, because this is a wild street course, high elevation changes, very, very tight corners. I mean, these are tight, slow corners with fast straightaways. They're going to be pushing nearly 200 miles an hour down the straightaways, down to corners that you're running 50, 40 miles per hour in, and very, very tight section of this track. It's almost a combination of really what we saw in Spain and Monaco, not just Monaco itself, but the speed differences that we saw at the Spanish Grand Prix, and then the tight road course racing action where you can't pass anyone at Monaco. That's a real summary of what this race is going to be like. Not only that, you have a situation where when we're looking at the teams, for an example, like, let me bring this over real quick. Sorry. When you're looking at the teams, we're seeing that Aston Martin was having issues. Both drivers locked up in qualifying. Lance Stroll ended up destroying the car, but we also saw Vettel, flat spotted tire, or basically locked the tires up entering one of these tough hairpin corners. Aston Martin has been, working on their brakes this entire weekend. You have a situation where we're seeing how slow Haas is in general. I mean, clearly Magnussen is going to beat Schumacher head-to-head, but we might not have Haas work their way into the top 10. We also have a situation to where, sorry, I got to move this stuff over, where you have the McLaren drivers being very, very identical. And this is a situation where it really is, you're seeing teams perform very similar. And comparing teammates and comparing teams, I don't think we're going to see a lot of gigantic movements up or down the grid in this race, specifically between the guys starting from 6th to 14th. And that includes everyone from Gasly, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Vettel, Alonso, Norris, Ricciardo, Ocon, and Zhao, just because the situation to where you're qualifying very similar to where your team is going to run. Guys that I think can actually stay in the top 10 being there, I think it's Tsunoda. When we compare how fast he is and how consistent he's been, Tsunoda's going to be there. However, you have Gasly, his teammate, right there, $5,200 starting sixth. I think he maintains a running position very close to Tsunoda. I think he beats him out, maybe by one spot, but I think Gasly maintains a running position inside the top 8 here. When we look at Fernando Alonso versus his teammate, I think Fernando Alonso gets the 5 bonus points just because I think he stays in front of his teammate. I don't know if he finishes any higher than 10th. I think he might just end up finishing in 10th. Norris is a guy that I think, and I've talked about Norris a lot this year, of a guy that I kind of like getting to because he's in a price range that makes it a bit, uncomfortable to get to, but Ricciardo isn't going to beat him head to head. Norris is right on the edge of working his way into 9th place. And so this is a situation where I'm playing guys expecting them to run and finish right where they're starting. I think it's very easy to determine the 5+ bonus points this weekend because it's dictated by qualifying positions. I really do. I just don't see a lot of guys swapping positions here. Like I don't see Hamilton beating George Russell. I don't see, as I just said, I don't think Alonso gets passed by Esteban. And so Alonso's going to get the 5 points. At least that's what I have projected for. Same thing with Norris. And so really the video this weekend is more so the contest is going to be won or lost by who you have to win the race. I think it's going to be one of the Red Bull drivers. It is going to be very close between Perez and Verstappen. I think Leclerc leads the early part of the race, but once, obviously Leclerc ran the fastest lap, but when we look at the straightaways, Red Bull is going to be faster than Ferrari on the straightaways. That is where Red Bull is going to pass him. It just depends on if Ferrari can maintain, running right behind whatever Red Bull is in front of them and then either using the DRS to get by him or just staying behind him or holding them off in the tight corners. I don't have a lean one way or the other. I kind of like Perez here. I think the chalk play is going to be Verstappen just because when you look at the practice data, Verstappen was there, but I think Perez is going to be right there. And when we look back at Monaco, I understand that the whole track isn't like Monaco, but Perez did beat Verstappen. He had the speed, and all he did was slow people down, or not slow people down, but nobody could pass him, I think Perez is makes for a very, very interesting captain. Clearly, you're going to play Red Bull or Ferrari in your constructor lineups, but this is a slate where I think ownership is going to be spread out pretty evenly. In terms of where we're going at the value range, this is a very, very interesting week. It just depends on where you're at. I don't have a real lean of where the chalk's going to go just because I really do think ownership is spread out at the captain position. I think this is a week that leans very much towards building a pretty balanced line and maybe not necessarily feeling the need to go down to one of the Williams drivers. I don't think Lance Stroll is viable. I don't think Zhao is viable at 3,200. So if I'm not building that way and I'm not getting a Schumacher because I think Kevin Magnussen outscores him, I don't think you can really play anybody under $4,600 like that. That's just where I'm at. I think everybody $4,600 below loses the head-to-head, clearly Albon or Latifi, but they're not getting any, they're not scoring any points in this race. You're getting the 5 points, but for paying bare min. But I like the idea of building a balanced line, staying above $4,600. And maybe getting the Vettel, but trying to play guys that are starting inside the top 10. I think that's how I want to approach this race and how I want to approach the builds. And even with that, this might be a situation where I run the same core for the drivers and just swap out captains. I don't have a lean towards anything else other than swapping out captains and constructors, because if I'm playing a balanced line, I'm most likely getting to Magnussen. I'm most likely getting to Fernando Alonso. maybe you try and get different and you do get up to, if I can click it, maybe you try and do get up to Norris just because he's $8,000 and maybe some people can't afford that. I think it's a balanced type of build this weekend, and I think it's staying above $4,600 outside of Vettel for your line. So hopefully maybe that helps you out. Maybe it doesn't, but at least that's my takeaway. That's my opinions entering this race, and it's going to be great. It's going to be worth getting up at 5 in the morning to watch. So I will see you guys next time. And if, like I said, if you want to support me, support Pearce, support these videos, I've maintained them through this season. I've been here each and every week. I know it's sometimes kind of late on Saturdays, but that's just how it is with NASCAR and everything. The Patreon projections will be up shortly following this video, but thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you guys later.